then one more before we go. I want to hear about the Old City Jail, and I think is in Charleston, South Carolina.
It is.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, the Old City Jail is in downtown Charleston. The original site goes back to the late 1600s. And I don't know if people are aware, but Charleston is basically filled in. This is land that has been created because that entire area was swampland. Charleston borders on the Cooper and Ashley rivers, and so those were very prominent rivers for pirates and other traffic back in the late 1600s. So at that point, there was some British influence, within the area, and the powers that be had sort of designated that area as a place to hang pirates and people who had, broken the law. And so the earliest occupation of where the Old City Jail sits was a gallows. And, bodies were being dumped in the river. And over time, they filled in that area and created land and subsequently built the jail. But before the jail was built, there was something called I think it was the Sugar House, where they would hold prisoners and make them grind sugar cane. And that's why they called it the Sugar House. And then they built the jail. But anyway, so a long history of really some bad stuff going down there as far as how they treated the prisoners and how they would dump the bodies just out in the swamp, after they would execute them, just dump them out. Over time, they became a little more civilized in how they treated the people, but at least they would bury them. So, they were actually buried in all of these unmarked graves that surround the Old City Jail. So it's reputed to be just very, very haunted. And early in my, paranormal investigative career, I was very attracted to that site. And I think I've investigated there 3 times. But one prominent figure is Lavinia Fisher. She and her husband ran a boarding house outside of Charleston. And the story goes that they basically robbed businessmen that would come into Charleston on horseback. Their place was called the 6 Mile House. It was 6 miles outside of Charleston. So they would lure these businessmen into this boarding house with food. They had served dinner and had overnight boarding. And if they felt the visitor had a lot of money, Lavinia would fix up her special tea, and which basically, rendered the person unconscious and oftentimes was deadly. But they had this one room that had a fake floor that would dump the unconscious victim or dead victim into the basement. And so all these businessmen went missing, and the local authorities tracked them eventually back to this boarding house and discovered numerous bodies, skeletons, and arrested Lavinia and her husband, John. So they were held in the prison in the early 1800s. And she's been sort of deemed as the first female serial killer in America. They say that she and her husband killed over 100 people. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but that's what this is how the story goes. So she was held there. She was the first white woman held in the prison or in the jail awaiting trial. And she was subsequently hanged at one of the squares in Charleston. And there's a lot of information online about Lavinia and her hanging and what she said right before she was hanged. And they subsequently hanged her husband. So many of the stories say that Lavinia is a very strong presence in the jail. So the times that I investigated, I directed a lot of my questions to Lavinia. And in one investigation in particular, I was there for most of the night and investigated this area on the third floor where she was held in one of the holding cells. And on my website, under the Evidence 2 tab, there's some photographs of an entity that was captured coming through these bars of that holding cell. And I deemed it the old hag face, because that's what it looks like to me, the hag, the witch hag, or this, hag face that you've kind of heard about coming down through the centuries. So that was a really good capture of a photo. And also that same night, downstairs in the morgue, my partner and I, we were attacked by a female, according to the EVP audio. My partner was actually picked up and thrown into me about 5 feet. And we retrieved some audio afterwards of a female saying, "Attack them, get them." And you can hear footsteps running towards us, and then this attack occurred. So, that was pretty, something to remember, to say the least, about the Old City Jail. But we captured tons of stuff, and subsequently did my ghost story for A&E about the Old City Jail, because we just got so much really good evidence from that investigation.
Yeah, and I noticed on your site you've got some areas where people can check out some of your media work as well. So,
Right.
and the stories you've shared with me today, as well as some of the upcoming, because you've got a lot more investigative evidence and history that you'll be putting up there. So I want people to, we'll direct them to check out, keep tabs on it, like I will too, because I'm always excited to see what else you put out, because I know you and I could sit and talk for hours, literally.
Oh, yeah.
And and I'll end with this. So and I think I may have asked you this before in one of our conversations, but I'm always curious, because we talk to people that have different experiences and have different reconciliations of what they think it stems from. But in your case, you've described your childhood and having abilities and almost a higher level of consciousness that allowed you to see and experience things others didn't. Then you've experienced clearly things that could be put in one bucket, maybe an alien abduction, to a spiritual, entity, dark force interacting with you physically in other ways. What do you think is it your higher consciousness, or how would you define your ability to experience these things and the experiences you've had? What would you, if you could define it, would you and could you?
I just think it's my vibratory frequency that, having had these experiences since I was a very small child, has changed my vibratory pattern at an atomic level, because that's where our energy comes from. It is at an atomic level, and even physicists now are describing electron energy as vibratory. So science, is starting to pay attention. But I do think that, just having had these experiences my entire life, I just vibrate differently, maybe at a higher frequency. And that, opens my consciousness to a different way of viewing the world and the galaxy and the universe. because I've always just thought differently than the people around me and been, intrigued by subject matter that, is kind of off the beaten path. But I think it all boils down to consciousness. It's all consciousness, whether you're talking about paranormal, the good, the positive energy and the bad energy, or ufology or cryptozoology, if you're talking about Sasquatch. It's all stemming from consciousness and what your intention is. I typically go out with high intention, to communicate with a higher realm. Even though I've been in these locations where, there's some lower realm energy vibrating around. And I know that I open myself up to those things, and I've experienced them at more than one location. And I have only myself to, blame for that. But it does tell me that it's there as well, the dark energy as well as the light energy. And what is your intention when you go out? Are you intending to communicate with this darker force, or do you want to communicate with the lighter, higher force? For the most part, I try to stay in that higher realm of communication. But it's all consciousness, and physicists and scientists are starting to pay attention to that. There's a wonderful astrophysicist, Dr. Rudy Child, who's looking at a form of black hole as the seat of consciousness, and it's called a MECO. It's an acronym, MECO. It's not the typical black hole in that everything goes in and nothing comes out. This one, actually, there's energy coming back out. And could that be what we've often heard of as the Akashic record, where all information, all knowledge from all times is stored. And, as you change your frequency or your vibration, can you more easily tap into that storage? Many theorize that's what Einstein and Tesla could do, and Da Vinci, and, numerous other people who have come up with these just phenomenal theories. And they would admit they didn't know where it came from. It was just like something they tapped into. So I think as humans, we all have that ability. It's just, what is your intention, and what do you want to communicate with? Do you want to keep those blinders on and just stay in this material world? Well, that works for a lot of people, and maybe that's where they should be. And if you believe in past life regression, which I do, maybe that's where they're supposed to be in this life. But I think I've incarnated or reincarnated many, many lifetimes, and that also has helped me think differently. I'm at a different level of consciousness maybe than someone who's only reincarnated a few thousand or a few hundred lifetimes. So if you look at it in that aspect, we can't all be on the same level of consciousness. If this earthly plane, if we're here to learn and, come back and learn and learn and learn, then, some of us may have been here longer than others.